Hello, fabulous listeners. Thanks for tuning in to Old Bodies Outside. This is your host, Dr. Brian Peterson. This episode's guest is Chrissie Catling, who is an advanced rapid transformational therapist and clinical hypnotherapist. During this episode, we'll learn about how rapid transformational therapy is used to access core beliefs, values, habits, and emotions embedded in the subconscious, and learn about the scientific evidence that shows it is possible to rewire neural pathways that cause negative behaviors into healthy neural pathways. Chrissie is the founder of Access Your Own Healing and focuses on treating those who suffer from complex trauma, unresolved pain, PTSD, anxiety, depression, low self-esteem, sensitivities, a sense of disconnection, imposter syndrome, and she helps with optimizing the mind-body functioning. You can check out more about Access Your Own Healing at www.accessyourownhealing.com. I invited Chrissie onto Old Bodies Outside because I've been reading the book titled Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself, written by Dr. Joe Dispenza. In his book, Dr. Dispenza discusses the neural plasticity of the brain, which is the ability of the nervous system to modify itself and reorganize in response to experiences. Rapid transformational therapy builds on this but creates faster and lasting change. Chrissie, it's an honor to have you on Old Bodies Outside.
I'm so grateful to be here, Brian. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, why don't you
Yeah.
let the audience know where you're connecting in from?
I'm calling in from Melbourne, Australia. Winter here. It was a nice brisk get up this morning, that's for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, we are entering the thick of summer here with it's June 19th, so is tomorrow the summer solstice for us, winter solstice for you?
It is indeed. So we'll have our shortest daylight day tomorrow.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm an early go to bed person, an early wake up person, and lately when I've been going to bed it's been still light out, so it's been hard to fall asleep a little bit.
I'm the opposite. Pull the blankets up in the morning and look outside when it's cold, and I think, oh, I love my nest.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, let me stay
yeah.
warm. Well, why don't we get into this? I know you have so much to talk about with rapid transformational therapy. It's something that you've been doing for quite a while and you're very passionate about, and you've helped a lot of people and you've helped yourself. And so I'm really, really interested to learn more. As I said, I've been inspired to learn more about this topic through reading the book, Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself. And that's kind of what led me to asking you to be on All Bodies Outside. So why don't we start off with learning about what is rapid transformational therapy, which is also referred to as RTT?
Correct. So, rapid transformational therapy is a hybrid therapy. It's a very forward form of therapy based in neuroscience that has been developed by Marissa Peer, who's quite a renowned mindset thought leader. And Marissa, over her 30 expansive years of learning, combined hypnotherapy, cognitive behavioral therapy, known as CBT, neuro-linguistic programming, NLP, and psychotherapy. So it's this wonderful combination of some amazing tools to use, which enables one to access through hypnosis the subconscious mind. So we get to the goal of the therapist is to identify and address emotional and psychological issues in a very short period of time. It's it's amazing.
Yeah, and so how is it that people develop patterns of behaviors, and where does that come from? And how does that something that is within the help of rapid transformational therapy?
Okay, so patterns of behavior and beliefs come by generally very either scenes, places, events, and times in your life, especially in your formative years, but then also possibly traumatic scenes or scenes that have been really had a large impact on you. Your mind makes decisions for you, your subconscious mind, in order to try and keep you safe. So it makes these decisions for you based on past experience and knowledge, or just its knowing. And these beliefs it creates then creates your basis for thoughts, for how it drives the feelings in your body and your patterns of behavior. And also the mind-body connection. So if your mind is saying, I'm not safe, it's signaling to the body, let's make adrenaline, cortisol, which then in turn signal back to the brain with these chemicals, all is not well, I'm not safe. So you get this looping. So it's the subconscious mind is like drives us. The conscious self can look out and make decisions in the present moment, but that's not what actually drives how we go about living and engaging in our world, what our thoughts, beliefs, patterns of behavior are. I hope that answered your question.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like we're going to need to talk some more about the subconscious. But before we do that, I wanted to hear about, you mentioned some hypnotherapy along, as a tool with rapid transformational therapy. So how does RTT work? If you had
Oh,
if you're working with someone, how does it work?
cool. So RTT uses hypnotherapy as the inroad. So unlike all those scenes you might have seen of someone being placed in hypnosis on a stage and they're doing things that they don't want to do, hypnotherapy doesn't work like that. You're accessing the subconscious mind. You have free will. You're aware of the room and sounds around you, and you have control. So the the role of the or goal of the RTT therapist is to guide the client to find the root causes of whatever is limiting them, limiting emotions, beliefs. And when finding these, which is a process of instruction and directing the mind, um, one can go about helping the client upgrade those thoughts. So can I give you an example? Would that be helpful?
Yeah, I love that.
Okay, so you're in the subconscious, so you've accessed that through hypnosis. Let's say you come across through being instructed to go back to scenes, places, events, and times. You've come across being 4 years old, and as a 4-year-old, you've reached out to pat a dog, and the dog's decided, the dog's gone to bite you. So the subconscious mind's job is to say, I'm going to keep you safe. So I'll decide for you in that moment that dogs are scary. So I'll make you frightened of all dogs. But I'll also go one step further and I'll make you a little bit hypervigilant and a little bit scared of the world at large. So then nothing else can try and bite you and hurt you. So that might be helpful when you're 4 years old. But that belief we've found when working with the subconscious mind in that particular scene and other scenes that convey the same message, because we go back to generally 3 scenes, and I'll explain why 3 scenes. When you're getting this compounding information from the outer world and your subconscious mind is making decisions to try and keep you safe, just like the dog, all dogs I'll make you scared of, and I'll make you a little bit apprehensive and hypervigilant about the world in case something else hurts you. then we can go about in that space telling the subconscious mind that that's no longer you. So we upgrade the mind by instructing it that, one, I'm no longer 4 years old and I'm an adult that can look after myself. And lots of other reasoning behind that. And so we upgrade the mind, and then towards the end of a session, I've got a very large toolkit in that space, so I can use the modalities that I spoke of earlier. And then at the end of a session, I've worked with the client pre-session to write what life is like without feeling what they've come to the session to clear. The magic wand stuff, which is fantastic. And then I've written a bespoke script for the client, and I use that language to empower the subconscious mind, to teach it that now I am worthy, I am safe. I'm safe and free, and for some people it might be I'm lovable, I'm all the things that are missing for somebody. You upgrade the subconscious mind, and then post their session, that language I also tape, and that is given to the client to listen to once a day minimum for 21 days, because the science shows that making that language familiar takes 3 weeks minimum in order for the subconscious mind to go, that's my new way. It builds those new neural pathways in the brain, as the old, what was familiar, limiting thoughts, beliefs that create limiting patterns of behavior die away. So it works rapidly, it creates lasting change, and it's incredibly life enhancing. And Brian, the ways most people find out that these changes have occurred for them are a couple of ways. If you've come to me and you've had, let's say, a fear of flying, you're able to get on that plane and know that that session worked. So, but if for most people, when it comes to emotional and psychological issues, it's retroactive. You've got to get out and live a bit of life to be able to look back and go, wow, I don't think like that anymore, and I don't do that anymore. And so it's that living your life, you get to experience a new sense of self.
Yeah, that sounds wonderful. It sounds like the facilitation process is extremely helpful too.
Totally empowering, because a lot of times the subconscious mind is like a great big library. It doesn't forget anything. Where consciously we can forget what's happened to us along the way, but the subconscious mind remembers everything. So when we access that space and work in that highly suggestible environment, which is the subconscious, unconscious mind, we get to find out, maybe, like I said, what happened when you were 4 years old that you might have completely forgotten. I've even gone as far back as clients being in utero, hearing what their mothers or conversations have been said. That's very normal. So we can start from being in utero right through to your present day experience. And it's the mind makes those decisions, the subconscious mind, to keep you safe, and a number of other things it does. During times that are enhanced. Some are traumatic, and others might be just something really going on for the client that has created a feeling of dis-ease or not being seen or heard. Another little example of that would be, I worked with a client who had imposter syndrome big people pleaser. Those two things seem to go together quite often. And one of the scenes of mine showed her, she's a little, she's about 3 years old, and she's standing in an adult party environment, trying to get the attention of her parents or one of the adults in the room, and no one's listening. So because she felt so awful about not being seen or listened to, her mind decided, well, rather than you feel awful, I'll just make you not say things and not articulate your needs, because that way you won't experience that pain, that feeling of discomfort. So that would have served to maybe as a 3-year-old, but in business and in her home life with her family, to not be able to speak up, to share what she thinks might be very progressive at work and helpful, and also just always going about kind of pleasing everyone to fit in, was incredibly limiting to her. So one session we got to upgrade the mind to know that that's not her way anymore. It's
Yeah.
incredibly empowering.
Yeah, and it was interesting to hear about in utero, because I got to imagine the mind at that point is fully 100% the subconscious.
Totally. We're fully subconscious until we're the age of 7 years old. So
Okay.
it's like we're in full hypnosis. The conscious self mind hasn't developed fully. And when we're in, this is amazing, when we're in that fully subconscious space up until the age of 7, your mind believes everything. The subconscious mind doesn't know the difference between real or imagined, true or false. It just takes everything in as the truth. So whatever is going on around, whether they're being told you're wonderful or you're being told you're unworthy,
Take
it
it in.
just believes it all. It can't discern that someone's angry at the moment. Let's say an adult or a parent is angry. That child will go, that's about me, not about the parent. They're saying things that are not about me. They'll believe that to be their truth. And
Yeah.
this is where we start to build our beliefs from those early formative experiences. And
Yeah,
then we run those beliefs for the rest of our life until we get to change them.
right. They become, and they produce automated behaviors almost.
Oh, totally.
Yeah. You know,
Absolutely.
I was thinking about early, as you're explaining this, early evolution of humans. And so at that point, maybe humans were living to be about mid 20s. And we have the subconscious, which is a library of everything. It's taken a picture, a video of everything. But to get us to that, that point of mid 20s, and at that point, something might happen, we pass away. Maybe it was an effective tool then, but now with, contemporary society, we're living longer and longer for the most part. Maybe not people in the United States, but for the most part, we're living longer and longer. And so I feel like rapid transformational therapy actually has a larger and larger place in society with helping people because of that.
Correct. And going to those primordial days, what's happening there is the the mind loves to keep you safe. That's its number one job. But it also loves its primordial setting from those times is to keep you in the familiar. Because if you ate the wrong foods, you might have poisoned yourself and die. Or if you walked unfamiliar paths or got lost from your clan, you could perish. So its primordial setting is to keep you in the familiar. And like you were saying, that might have been great then in those periods of short lifespans. But to keep us in the familiar, living a limiting belief that we might have created when we're 4 and 3 and 7, that's been compounded when we're in other periods of our lives, or then we're living our past experience, and the mind keeps us in the familiar, which is not particularly helpful if we want to upgrade ourselves. Because if we do, and no disrespect, talk therapy has its place. You're witnessed, you're given tools to help, but working on a conscious level, you're not accessing that subconscious mind where all your programs and beliefs are run. And that's the big difference between that ongoing therapy. And I'm heading into a question I think you posed earlier with me when we were discussing this podcast, but that there are major differences there. And this enables accessing the subconscious mind, just enables you to upgrade limited thoughts, beliefs that run your limited patterns of behavior and feelings in a very rapid way, hence its name, Rapid Transformational Therapy.
Yeah, well, you've been talking about a lot of stuff here. And so we've talked about the subconscious. We talked about how some of those patterns can get stuck with us in an early age, and we're continuing them for sometimes maybe decades. And so, is there any other tidbits scientifically of how this works with neurons wiring over here? Maybe they unwire over here. That's something that I mentioned in the introduction of some organizing of neurons. And
Mm-hmm.
is that taking place in the subconscious?
Absolutely. So that's where, so the science behind RTT and accessing the subconscious mind is if you're running programs or beliefs, they are sending messages and keeping neural pathways alive in the brain. So this is sort of the science behind. So all those neural pathways, if they're sending messages, being sent messages, I'm not enough, and that pathway is continually told that information, it will remain alive within your brain. If we upgrade the subconscious mind to start sending messages of I am worthy or I am safe, and we start building upon those messages, then those neural pathways, new neural pathways will be built. And the more we fire and wire those particular pathways, the old pathways die away. And then you have this new circuitry that is, I'm worthy, I'm safe, I'm lovable, I'm healthy, I'm all those wonderful things. And the old have actually died away, hence generating this new sense of self. And the science behind why popping someone into hypnosis is when you access the subconscious and become highly suggestible, you're working in lower brainwave states. We're normally hitting on the alpha brainwave states, which means you are highly suggestible, perfect time to make those deep restorative changes and life-enhanced messages. We're doing so in a conscious state. Your brainwaves are much higher and less suggestible. So when we're trying to make critical decisions, our brainwaves are, yes, much, much higher and more compact. And the lower we go, the more suggestible and the more the brainwaves, almost you'll see charts will flatten out. And then we can really work with those, the subconscious, unconscious self. It's fascinating. And some of those great thought leaders like the Dr. Joe Dispenzas and Marissa Peer and the Bruce Liptons all understand that this is the place of great change. You know, these people talk about the change on the inside occurs first before you can see the change on the outside. where we've all grown up being taught you have to see it to believe it. And the new evidence to this is believe it, create the change, and then you see the evidence of the change in your outer world. So it's completely flipped.
Yeah, so through believing it, can you create an experience out of that, which then starts getting hardwired into your subconscious?
Totally. Yeah. You
Because there's,
start to, if you, the evidence with quantum physics, which I know very, very little about, but they speak of what you focus on, you create. So if you're focused on the lack that is running in your subconscious mind, that's what you keep producing in the outside, in your world, in your existence. So you'll see, you see the difference in people, those who are in what I would almost call that beautiful flow state. Where others seem to be just hitting the same walls all the time, coming up against the same limiting problems time after time. And, the difference is what's happening on the inside, what's going on within that person that creates that external reality.
yeah, yeah. Wow, that's
It's,
fantastic.
it's powerful. And no
Very
one
powerful.
teaches us this in school. And if we could learn some of these wonderful things about how the mind works
Right.
and how to apply those principles, our youth could be doing it, well, all of us, but if we were teaching that into our school curriculums, we would be teaching and growing a whole new group of people into the world. And someone like Joe Dispenza is teaching people how to do this through meditation.
Yeah,
Yeah,
well, and I think that there's definitely a phenomenon going on with a lot of people numbing themselves through life. And, they're covering up maybe their patterns of behaviors with alcohol or other substances. And maybe because they feel hopeless. And I think that it sounds like transformational therapy, RTT, shows that you don't have to be hopeless. You can change, and you can change at any point in your life.
absolutely. You can indeed. And those who've experienced deep trauma or, um, you know, the most horrific, let's say our war vets or sexual abuse. I work quite a lot with those who've been abused. Um, there is great healing that can occur in that space because not only are we working on limiting beliefs, but we're working on the connections to past trauma. Because if those connections in your subconscious mind are kept alive and you're constantly being re-triggered, or you haven't been able to express what's gone on for you, so you've been disempowered to the point where that dumbing down stops you from being able, that hopelessness or that inability to be present. So you feel that terrible disconnect in your own life or the continual triggering in your life. We get to work with that. So this is a deeply healing modality for those who suffer in those ways.
Yeah. So I don't know if we mentioned this earlier. I did want to ask, so what are the basic kind of limiting beliefs identified in RTT therapy?
Mm-hmm. Three main ones. Very simply, I'm not enough. Marissa Peer, the founder of RTT, believes that's basically the bottom line for what goes on for everybody. The For those who feel very limited, they don't feel enough, they don't feel worthy. The other two is I don't fit in is very strong, and when you really think about what not fitting in is like, it can mean that you maybe you've got a great job, but your mind's going, I don't fit in, I don't fit in, I don't feel safe in this environment. So you start to, you don't feel in place. So that the effects of that are huge. The ramifications in our workplace and in our families and our community, if you don't feel like you fit in, is just enormous. And the other one is, so we've gone blank. I'm not enough. I don't fit in. It's not available to me.
Ah,
So, and that too ripples out into the world in such a powerful, limiting way. It's not available to me. If you think about that, you know, safety, happiness, abundance, health, all those things, whatever is really not working for you becomes unavailable to you. And then for instance, let's just take sensitivities on a health basis. And I work more with the emotional self than I do the physical body. But for those who experience high sensitivities, which was me, you can start to believe every time something happens, it just can compound that, oh, I am sensitive. So then that's not available to me, and that can come in the ways of foods and the things that physically contribute to a healthy life can become completely unavailable to you, which in an ongoing way, well, I know for myself, part of my story, I got to a point where I didn't know quite what I was going to eat next because my mind had started to just continually limit the things that I used to eat well, be able to eat really well. It made me sensitive to those certain things. I mean, that was actually, those sensitivities were driven by hypervigilance, always living in a stress state where your body can't digest and be at ease and sleep well and process information properly. So stress has a very large impact on our health and well-being, and it can affect us in many, many ways. So yes, I'm not enough, I don't fit in, it's not available to me.
okay, I'm not enough. I don't fit in. It's not available to me. And I can see how all three of those limiting beliefs, which actually are quite common, I feel like I have said those things to myself multiple times,
Mm-hmm.
can cause a lot of stress.
Totally. And then and I mean, if you really narrow it down per client, what is going on for them, the impact of one or multiple of those is is huge. How that affects someone's life is, you know, safety number one is such a thing that can drive someone not being able to step outside their door and feel safe in the outer world. And when they do, become so hardwired in their mind to always be looking for the next dangerous point. I had a client who, before she left, wherever she was living, she had to went. She needed to know where the closest hospital was, where various places that were safe to her were, how far away she was in order to get home if she needed to sort of flee. I mean, that form of sort of agoraphobia to the point where some people can't even step outside their homes into the world. I mean, the impact of that is extraordinary. Um, so those points seem quite simple, but they are very profound, how they work in people's lives.
Yeah, very profound. I think that that touches pretty nicely on the title of the podcast with old bodies outside from your success story. They're kind of talking a little bit about a success story there with helping, uh, your client there get outside and maybe do it in a way that they're not hyper vigilant.
Mm. So that's important to you, isn't it? All bodies outside.
Yeah, I think it's
Yeah.
super important, and it's something that I feel very closely with. I'm a professor of park management and conservation, and one of the kind of tenets of my research is looking at people's experiences to see if they have quality experiences when they go to the outdoors, they go outside, they go to parks and protected areas. And a lot of my research takes place at, say, national parks, and we use social psychology approaches to understand what type of experience people have. But ultimately, we want to make sure people have quality experiences when they're outdoors, because when they do, they're going to be more inclined to go outdoors more often. And hopefully that will eventually boost their kind of conservation ethic, maybe stewardship of the area. And just overall, through that stronger relationship with nature, you're going to come to love it. And hopefully, that's something where you kind of have some positive behaviors that you reciprocate to nature with conservation and whatnot. And so, hearing about people getting outside is always something that excites me. And that could be baby steps. It's not something that, talking about going and spending 5 nights out in the backcountry of a national park, but it could just mean getting to the end of your driveway and starting there, maybe getting halfway through your driveway and then turning it around. But taking those baby steps to get further and further out, like I love hearing that stuff, and I think it's something that is a big aspect of people's health too.
Totally. So yes, I hug an odd tree. I
Yeah.
love nature. Yes, most
Yeah, no,
definitely. I have a friend who lives out of Melbourne City, about an hour and a half, in the most beautiful. There's some very beautiful, pristine countryside and forests in Victoria, Australia, and she lives. The back of her property is on this stunning forest. So we go and I can get lost in the forest with sort of that sense of the beauty, and there's kangaroos going through, and you see traces
wow.
of the wombat's been, and just all the lichens and ferns and mushrooms, and just heaven for me. I come back to the city so restored. So those places are so important to us.
Yeah,
And then you get even that deeper understanding of how important the trees are, and all the small life in the forest as well as the bigger, how they all support one another, and yeah, beautiful.
and support us too, right? And support our
Absolutely.
well-being. Yeah, and
Absolutely.
I loved hearing about your curiosity. I was imagining myself as you were kind of talking about your observations when you're out in your friend's forest. I was thinking about myself, like when I've had very curious experiences and just really looking around, taking the time to really smell what's going on around me, and those curiosities can lead to a very, very just great flow state for me, a very healthy flow state. And I hit that flow state, lose track of time, and then it's that sense of escape. It's so healthy. And then I go back. I feel like I have higher functioning when I go back to
Mm,
my routines that I got to take care of
mm.
back at home.
I would totally agree. I also have a great love of the mountains. Sometimes travel over to New Zealand, and the
Oh
mountains in the
wow,
South Island are small, sort of, it's a mini Canada. And I have that wonderful sense of being in my place, which is being small on the earth, rather than the human experience can become um, a little all encompassing,
yeah.
where we become more important than anything else, in the way we go about trying to make enough money and live our lives, and all the things that are sort of part of our human experience. And those quiet moments sitting at the foot of mountains, for me, bring me that sense of I'm small on the earth. And I love that, because I I think I should be small on the earth, not the center of everything, but a
Yeah,
part of everything.
I think it that sense of smallness is really healthy for maybe tempering my ego, offering a little bit of humility. I
Mm-hmm.
think that that sense of smallness is a wonderful effect of when we
Mm-hmm.
are, say, in a place with big mountains, like maybe what you're talking about in the South Island of New Zealand or up in Canada, or
Mm-hmm.
maybe some of the mountains we have in the United States. But that sense of smallness, I love that. I love that a lot.
Yeah.
And I this summer, my wife and I we're going to go backpacking in Yosemite National Park, which is one of our iconic national parks in the United States, and we're going to do a week long trip, and we put together our routes on our GPS, so we go off of trails and we kind of like make our own path, and we get really good solitude. And that's another thing too, is we have when we're out there, our we have a strengthening of our bond too. And I don't know if that has, all these things, and it probably is that all these things are kind of playing into strengthening our bond. We're feeling small together. We're feeling kind of, humbled. We're feeling curious. We're getting into flow states. We're physically active. All
Mm.
those things, and we get to reflect out loud and talk about it. There's something that helps strengthen our bond too. But going back to New Zealand, have you ever heard of? There is a long distance hiking trail that traverses both islands, and it runs north to south, south to north. And it's called the Te Aurora. Have you heard of it?
I have indeed. Um, I don't know if I haven't. I'm not the big hiker. I've got a brother and sister-in-law who love those sorts of adventures, but I think doing a long walk, whether that be 4 hours or 4 days or 4 weeks, I don't know how long is that walk. Do you know, Brian?
Oh, I don't know how long it is. I know it traverses both islands, but one of the things that's great about those trails though is you don't have to set out to do the whole thing. You can go out for an hour one day, and maybe that's perfect for you, or maybe it's like, hey, I
Mm-hmm.
want to do one night overnight, and that's perfect for you. But those long trails offer a variety of experiences for everyone, and that's something that I think is really awesome.
Absolutely. To go
Yeah.
for a little walk quietens that mind too. It allows, when you say you get into that flow state, there is a quietening of all that mental chatter, and RTT enables that mental, especially negative mental chatter, to quieten down. Because if
Yeah.
that's no longer your experience, and that's not what you're feeding your mind anymore, and you're not building those neural pathways that keep firing and wiring the same old chatter in the back of your mind, there's a greater peace and a greater well-being. So that flow state we can access in a number of ways. Yeah.
Yeah, it can be accessed a number of ways. But I definitely relate to whether I'm out hiking. When I'm out hiking, I tend to lose that chattering of the mind. It's like the analytical conscious mind kind of dies off. I don't have access to my cell phone. I don't have access to emails, text messages, that kind of stuff. And so that was something that I was wondering about earlier, actually, with RTT and hypnosis. Is the hypnosis, you said that's the pathway to the subconscious, and is that how does hypnosis look? I mean, are they closing their eyes and getting relaxed so that you're essentially trying to turn off all the analytical brain functions that are going on?
Mm-hmm. Super easy. And I haven't come across anybody I haven't been able to pop into hypnosis. The idea is, with your eyes open, you get the client to roll their eyeballs up, to look like I'm doing, to look into your eyebrows or at a real or imagined spot above your head, and get some long, deep breaths happening with the eyeballs up, creating that tension in the eyeballs up, starts to put, with some long elongated breaths, starts to put you into REM, rapid eye movement, which is the beginning of that moving into that alpha state, the subconscious state, and letting go of the conscious mind. And then through just really simple direction and a little bit of actual moving the head forward as if you're looking over a balcony. Oh, once the eyeballs are up and these breaths are happening, I'll get you to close your eyelids down. And then just tell the mind that the muscles and nerves in and around your eyes are becoming heavy, droopy, drowsy. So it's just simple instruction. And then asking the client to lift their head forward. So this forward feeling encourages this sense that you are looking down some steps. And I'll say, I will count you down some imaginary steps. So it's all just instruction to the mind, but because you've popped the mind already into this rapid eye movement, early alpha suggestible state, it keeps following the suggestion. And of course, you're not walking down a flight of stairs. The earth hasn't opened up. We're just imagining that's where you're going. And I just talk about the muscles and nerves relaxing, that even the sounds of the room around you carry you deeper. Just simple, relaxing suggestions. And at the sort of by step 2, the conscious mind is moving away. And step 1, your subconscious mind is moving forward. And then I get the client to do a couple of what I call deepening techniques. Again, super easy. It might be to show the mind how suggestible you are, which is really helpful, not just to the conscious, you're still aware of this conversation going on in this space, fully aware, but it shows the subconscious mind, oh, I am suggestible, which is wonderful because it helps when we work together that I am suggestible, I can take in this new information. So that can be done through really simple exercises, for instance, hands out, and I'll tell the client that they've got magnets in each of their palms and the magnets have turned on, their palms are coming together. And I haven't found anyone that doesn't work with. And when the hands come together, I'll get the client to really drop your hands like a floppy rag doll. That's a deepening technique. Just these ways of letting go and rocking the head in order to relax the neck muscles and explain they're the first to tighten and the last to let go. Again, is suggesting to the mind, I am free, I've let go. So really, really simple. Takes 2-3 minutes tops to be in that space. And then the process goes saying to more, we're speaking now to the subconscious mind, that we can't address and fix. And I'll use the term, let's say it's about anxiety. We can't fix your anxiety until we go back to the root cause, the scenes, places, events and times, all to do with your anxiety. So I'm going to count you back from 5 to 1, to one scene at a time. So I'm continually giving direction to the client. So they don't have to think what's next. I'm just showing them the way and guiding their subconscious mind to go. So I might say, so on the count of 5, you're drifting back, right back to a scene, place, event and time. And then I'll count in 4, 3, 2, 1, years, months, weeks of peeling away until you go back to a scene. And you'll be, look, I would say 85% of clients, their mind will show them something. And if you take anxiety, they'll go, I'm trying to think of a scene. I'm standing in, something's happened in this. I'm 4 years old and I'm in this kitchen. So No, firstly, I will say with that scene, are you inside, outside? Is it daytime, nighttime? Are you with someone? And how old are you? So they start to define what that's really come into, focusing on that space. And then we ask lots of questions about what's going on. They'll go, well, I feel super anxious. And I'll go, well, you feel anxious because I feel anxious because somebody has said something or someone's angry. And you just keep asking questions, and the questions bring to the client's awareness what's happening for them in that space and what their mind is deciding for them. If I'm that anxious and the environment's not safe, it's making decisions for us based on its want to keep us safe.
Right.
So they're like a detective with my question. They start to actually uncover what their mind has done. And then later in the session, it's called daisy chaining. We go to 3 scenes because if you went to a movie and you only took one snapshot of the movie for movie shorts, you don't really know what the movie's about. But if you take a number of snapshots of the movie, you get a sense of what that movie's about. So the same is we go to 3 scenes. So the client starts to go, now I'm understanding why I'm got this limiting belief or limiting pattern of behavior happening, because they're starting to see all these connections and this very compacting choices that the mind is making, that has been limiting them, but from these particular events and times. And then we go upgrading the mind. So we'll go back to scene 1 and say, well, that was you. And I'll ask the client, I'll say, I want you to repeat after me, that was me, but that's not me now. So we're telling the mind, it's no longer me. I'm not 4 years old. And the client says, well, I'm not 4 years old and I'm adult now. So we keep telling the mind this new information that is relevant, and we upgrade each scene. And there's other wonderful tools in my toolkit, if you like, into it, where if someone, let's say, has been really disempowered by a hurter, and a hurter isn't necessarily someone who physically hurts you, can be, but might have been abusing you or others, or just really kind of holding you hostage in a way where you're totally disempowered. Happens a lot with children, but it happens a lot with adults too, where you haven't been able to speak and say. So we use a form of psychotherapy where we get the client to be able to say what they were feeling, like to articulate how awful that was for them, and to say all those things. And then I encourage them to say, well, from today forward, that's stopping. I'm no longer going to be disempowered. And you just I work through with them, depending on what's going on for the clients, because everyone is bespoke. We upgrade all those old thoughts and beliefs with wonderful new thoughts and empowered language, teaching the mind, this is now available to me, this new way is mine. And at the end of the session, towards the end, there's a reframing where you start to tell the mind with some head movement, which actually helps cognitively taking that information. The past is all in the past. It's shattered, smashed, it's erased and gone. So you're also saying that's done and dusted. So you're informing the mind it's in the past. And then the session becomes all about this wonderful transformational language that I've worked, I said briefly before, I've worked with the client pre-session to really work out what life would look and feel like for them if they weren't limited, that unlimited sense of self. And then I'll write a bespoke script. It takes me a couple of hours or more, depending on the person, that is just for them, that really works on upgrading the mind and filling the mind with all this new language that forms new beliefs and new patterns of behavior and new mind-body connection. And that builds new neural pathways. So that little bit, the transformational language at the end, I tape and I give that to the client. And their job is to listen to that once a day for a minimum of 21 days,
Okay.
which is the firing, wiring of all the new circuitry in the brain. So we're building new neural pathways as the old dies away.
Yeah. Yeah. So you've gone through this process of identifying the source of the limiting belief. You have upgraded the mind. You have empowered the mind. Now they're going through 21 days of making sure that those new neural pathways are generated. Does RTT go past that, or are they self-sufficient at that point because they've been given all the tools and they know the sources of the limiting beliefs?
Yeah, great question. So I offer one-on-one support to clients post a session. There isn't a lot of need in that space, but if someone has a felt experience that happens afterwards, they want to reach out and ask for my guidance or support, that is available to them, or if they have questions. So I'll always get back to my client within 24 hours, normally sooner than that. Look, rarely post a session, someone might have a bit of a physical release, which might mean going to the toilet a little bit more because they've had this very large mental sort of emotional upgrade and the body's just releasing. That doesn't happen very often, but I do alert a client that that might be, or quite often people are tired because they've done a lot of work in a very intense space. And look, intense is probably not right. They've just done a lot of work on shifting around a lot of thinking. So for the next few days, and they've been releasing, if someone's been able to re-empower themselves by saying things they never got to say, sexual abuse client who never got to voice, this is not right. You are not, this, what you did was wrong, and be very clear and strong about that. And I'm all good for saying whatever you need to say in that space in order for a client to empower themselves. In fact, I help them do that because a lot of people have been so disempowered. They're in a frozen state. They aren't able to articulate how they can, the things they would have wanted to say. It's like also being in an accident or it's coming across a suicide. They've been so traumatized they can't actually say the things they've needed to say. Or someone's died and they're no longer able to communicate with that person in person. But in that healing space, using some psychotherapy tools, you get them to be able to voice the things they need to, which is incredibly healing. So, yeah. And so one-on-one support, sorry, I was getting away. And then if the client wants, some don't, but most do, we have a post-session catch-up 3 weeks after.
Okay.
And that's always fascinating because most of the time people go, oh, I haven't really noticed a lot of change. So I'll ask a few more questions. And then you'll see the pennies starting to drop. They'll be going, oh, I did that the other day and I wouldn't normally have done that. And I had a client the other day say, oh, when I go out for dinner, I always face the door in case I have to make a quick exit or to see what's coming in case they're not safe. And she said, I didn't even think about doing that. Pennies dropping as we're talking. because they're
Yeah.
totally unaware that, because they don't operate in that way anymore, in that world
Not at
anymore.
all. Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
it's amazing.
So I have a bit of a naive question. You've used the terminology psychotherapy. What is meant by that?
We use what we'd call dialogue with the hurter, which is actually the articulation of the things that weren't said in order to empower yourself again. That's that part of psychotherapy that we use. The whole basis of psychotherapy, I would have to, um, it's the it's working on the empowerment of oneself through language and the articulation versus
Okay.
um, just conversations about what's not working.
Yeah, yeah. Is maybe that's where the questioning comes in, where your questions guide them to those three different scenes.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, nice,
Yes.
nice. Cassie, Chrissy, this has been an amazing conversation, and I want to, just talk a little bit more about access your own healing. And so, if someone in the listening audience is interested to learn more about your services, learn more about access your own healing, how do they get started with that process?
Okay. Well, you could easily jump online and you can send an inquiry to me through my website. That's easy. I will respond to you, and the offer is to have a complimentary introduction call or Zoom. I don't sell anything. I'm there to actually answer questions in that space, ascertain if I can help that particular person, to flesh out what they're wanting to achieve, and just simply discuss my fees. So that intro is complimentary, and that's a really lovely way to start, so we get to meet one another and see if this work is for them.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's fantastic. Well, Chrissy, this has been a wonderful, wonderful conversation, and I've certainly learned a lot here. I came into this, I'm way outside of my expertise of park management and conservation. I'm glad that we got to talk about that for a little bit. That was kind of fun.
Well, I don't
Um,
do what you do, so yeah.
yeah, no, it's great to learn more about RTT. I'm feeling very inspired. So, I want to say thank you for coming on to Old Bodies Outside and connecting from Australia.
Mm. Well, I'm so grateful. Thank you for having me. Yeah,
Yeah, it's been
very
fantastic.
grateful.
Yeah, well, I am grateful too, and you're welcome. Okay, so I'm going to put on the outro music and we'll call it an episode.
All right. Thank you. Bye bye.
Yeah, you're welcome.